Some legends don't need to chase you. Some don't need claws. Some don't need wings. Some don't even need to be seen. Sometimes all it takes is a voice where there should be silence. A whisper in a room you know is empty. A shape on the tracks where no one could safely stand. Two states, two legends. Two stories that turn ordinary places into the kind you never look at the same way again. A farmhouse in Tennessee, a trestle in Kentucky. One lets fear into the home. The other waits until there is nowhere left to run. I'm Quackster, and this is Quack in the Dark, Urban Legends. Welcome back. This season, we're crossing America through the legends people still tell like warnings. Not like strange stories. Warnings. The kind tied to houses, roads, woods, bridges, and places where something happened once, or enough people believe it did, that the fear never really left. Tonight's episode is called Voices in the Dark. First, we head to Tennessee, where one of the most famous hauntings in America, folklore, still clings to the land. The Bell Witch. Then we cross into Kentucky, where a horned figure said to haunt a railroad trestle turned a real place into a nightmare. The Pope-Lick Monster. One is a voice that enters the house. The other is a presence waiting on the tracks. And both legends ask the same question. What do you do when the thing you fear is already exactly where you are? So keep the lights low, listen carefully, and if something calls out from the dark, make sure you know what's doing the talking. The knocking started just after midnight. Betsy Bell lay still beneath the blanket, eyes open in the dark, listening to the sound traveling through the room. 3 slow knocks, not at the door, inside the wall. She held her breath and waited for her father to move in the next room, or for the house to settle, or for anything ordinary to explain what she had heard. Nothing, only silence. Then the knocking came again, this time from the far side of the room. Betsy pushed herself upright and stared into the dark, trying to shape the furniture into something familiar. The room smelled like cold wood and lamp smoke. Moonlight barely touched the edge of the floor through the window. Everything was exactly where it should have been, except that sound. A scraping now. Soft, deliberate, like fingernails dragged slowly along the outside of the bed frame. Her throat tightened. She whispered for her mother. No answer. She tried again, louder this time. That was when the voice spoke. Not loud, not shrieking, just close. So close it felt like someone had leaned down beside the bed and spoken directly into the dark. A woman's voice. Dry, calm, certain. Betsy. She screamed then, the kind of scream that empties lungs all at once and leaves the whole house awake around it. Footsteps hit the floor in the next room. Her father rushed in holding a lamp. Her mother behind him, both of them searching corners, walls, the window, beneath the bed. There was no one there. No open door, no broken latch, no place for anyone to hide. only Betsy shaking so hard she could barely point to where the voice had come from. And as the family stood there, listening, trying to force reason back into the room, something struck the bedpost from the darkness. Once hard, then again. That is how legends like this begin. Not with certainty, with a house that no longer sounds empty when it should, with a family that knows the difference between a creak and a message. And in Tennessee, one of the most famous stories ever told about that kind of fear has a name: the Bell Witch. The Bell Witch legend is tied to the Bell family of the early 19th century Tennessee, near what is now Adams. Their home should have been the picture of an ordinary frontier life. Hard work, family routine, faith, isolation, and the quiet expectation that whatever troubles came your way would come informed you could understand. Weather, illness, debt, grief. Not a voice in the night. Not something moving through the walls. Not a presence that seemed to learn the house as quickly as people inside it. According to the legend, the disturbances began small. Knocks, scratching, dragging sounds, unexplained movement around the home. The kind of things that can still be argued with. The kind of things people can blame on mice, loose boards, wind, or imagination. But the bell haunting didn't stay small. That's what made it famous. Eventually, the unseen force haunting the Bell home began to speak. And once fear starts answering back, everything changes. The entity became known as the Bell Witch, though the name almost makes it sound simpler than it is. In most retellings, it was not just a ghost drifting through the house. It was intelligent, responsive, personal. It spoke to the family. It mocked them. It recited prayers and scripture. It sang. It threatened. It focused much of its attention on John Bell, the family patriarch, and Betsy Bell, his daughter. And that focus is what makes this legend so unsettling. This was not a random noise. This was attention. Think about how terrifying that would be. You might tolerate a strange sound. You might convince yourself a shadow has a trick of the light. But a voice that knows who you are, a voice that chooses when to speak and what to say, that doesn't feel like a haunting anymore. That feels like an invasion. Over time, the stories around the Bell Witch only deepened. The spirit was said to yank blankets from beds, slap and pinch family members, pound on the walls, and appear to move through the home without regard for doors or distance. Some visitors came specifically to hear it. Some claimed they did. Others left convinced something was wrong in a way that ordinary life could not explain. That matters, because once outsiders begin claiming they witnessed the same thing, the story stops being private. It becomes local truth. And local truth is one of the strongest fuels folklore has. The Bell Witch survived because it combined several fears at once. The fear of the unseen, the fear of losing control over your home, the fear of being singled out, and maybe worst of all, the fear that the thing tormenting you enjoys it. In many retellings, the Bell Witch was cruel in a deliberate way. It knew how to interrupt peace, how to turn a room tense, how to wait just long enough for the silence to settle before breaking it again. That is a very human kind of evil. And maybe that's why the legend has lasted. Because it doesn't feel like a random paranormal noise. It feels like intent. Some versions go even darker. They say the entity ultimately caused or hastened John Bell's death. Whether taken literally or not, the legend presents the haunting as more than a nuisance and more than a fright. It was pressure. Relentless personal pressure inside the one place people are supposed to feel the safest. And that may be the most unsettling part of it all. You can leave the woods. You can avoid the bridge. You can stay away from the swamp. But what do you do when the one thing you fear is already in the house and doesn't seem interested in leaving? That question is what makes the Bell Witch endure. Not just as a haunted house story, but as one of America's most famous supernatural legends. Because whether the explanation is rumor, religious fear, family conflict, exaggeration, or something truly unexplained, the emotional core stays the same. A family heard something impossible, then it spoke, then it stayed. And once a story like that settles into place, the place changes forever. A hallway becomes a threat. A bedroom becomes uncertain ground. A quiet house at night becomes something to be endured instead of trusted. That is the kind of damage a legend leaves behind. Invisible, permanent, personal. Maybe the Bell Witch is only folklore shaped by time, fear, and retelling. Or maybe some of the voices do learn how to stay after they should have faded. Either way, the next time you hear knocking in your room where no one is standing, don't be too quick to answer. The Bell Witch feels intimate, a voice in the house, a presence in the walls. A fear that learns your name before you understand what it is. But our next story is colder than that. Higher. More exposed. Because if the Bell Witch makes home feel unsafe, the next legend takes a place that is already dangerous and adds a face to it. A horned one. Let's head to Kentucky. If you're enjoying tonight's episode, make sure you're following Quack in the Dark and leave a 5-star review wherever you listen. That support helps more people find the show and helps the watchers keep growing. And if your hometown has a local legend, haunted place, or a story people still swear is real, send it to me on Facebook, Instagram, or Discord under Quack in the Dark. I want to hear what your part of the world still whispers about after dark. Now let's cross into Kentucky, where the danger doesn't start inside the house. It starts when you step too far onto the bridge. The rails hummed before they heard the train. Marcus stopped walking and looked down at the steel beneath his shoes. The vibration light at first, almost easy to ignore. His friend Tyler, a few steps ahead, turned back and gave him that look that said what both of them were already thinking. Maybe this was a bad idea. They'd come out there because of the stories, because everyone knew the name, because legends never sound dangerous enough when you hear them in the daylight, without the people around. The Pope Lake Monster, Goatman, something horned, something seen on the trestle. It sounded like the usual kind of local dare. Creepy enough to feel exciting, but ridiculous enough to survive being laughed at. It didn't feel ridiculous now. not with the drop below them swallowed by darkness, not with the narrow ties underfoot, not with the rails carrying that faint metallic shiver further into the night. "Let's go back," Marcus said. Tyler didn't answer. He was staring ahead. Marcus followed his gaze. At first he thought it was part of the trestle's frame, some darker section of the shadow where the bridge crossed into deeper black, but then it shifted. Not much, just enough. A shape standing further down the tracks where no one should have been able to stand comfortably at all. Tall, bent slightly forward, and wrong in the shoulders. Marcus felt the whole night narrow around that shape. He could not make out the details, not cleanly at least. That almost made it worse. Horns, maybe, or just beams behind it. Long arms, maybe, or shadow laid over steel. Then Tyler called out. A stupid thing to do, a human thing to do. "Hey!" The figure didn't move. Not toward them, not away. It just stayed there. And then, from very far off at first, came the sound they had both been trying not to hear. A train horn. Everything changed after that. The rails no longer hummed, they sang. Taylor swore and turned, but the bridge behind them felt impossibly long. Marcus looked ahead again, just once, and would later swear the shape had moved closer without ever seeming to take a step. Maybe it hadn't. Maybe panic collapsed the distance. But in that moment, all he knew was this. Something was on the trestle. A train was coming, and the bridge had stopped feeling like a dare and started feeling like a trap. That is the power of the Poplick monster. Even before you know the details, you understand the fear. A narrow railroad trestle over dark ground. No room to stand comfortably. No easy escape, and the possibility that something is already waiting for you up there. In Kentucky, that image becomes one of the region's most disturbing urban legends. The Poplick monster is most often described as part human, part goat creature. A goat man with horns, shaggy fur or pale skin depending on the telling, and a shape twisted enough to stay with people once imagined. Some versions paint it as physically aggressive. Others say it lures people onto the tracks by voice, hypnosis, or mimicry. Some make it demonic. Some make it merely monstrous. The details shift. The trap does not. That's why the legend works. Because the setting does half the work for it. Railroad trestles are already a frightening place. High, narrow, exposed, and built without any concern for anyone foolish enough to treat them like a path. Add darkness, a local rumor, and the possibility of a train you hear way too late, the fear hardly needs its supernatural help. But folklore rarely leaves a danger faceless. It gives it horns, it gives it a silhouette. It gives it intent. And in doing that, turns a dangerous place into a haunted one. That may be what makes the Poplick monster so effective. It feels ancient and modern at the same time. Ancient because horned figures, goat men, and hybrid creatures have haunted folklore for centuries. There's something deeply old in the image of a part human thing with animal features watching from a boundary place. Modern because the boundary place is not a forest clearing or ruined church. It is steel, wood, industry, a railroad bridge. The collision gives the legend weight. A devil on infrastructure, a monster at the crossing point between myth and machinery. And once that image exists, everything real about the trestle becomes part of the fear. the distance, the height, the sound of the rails carrying warning further than your body can react. The Popelic monster does not need to do much in the imagination. Sometimes all it has to do is stand there. That's enough, because panic will do the rest. Many legends survive because they decorate danger. This one survives because it embodies it. The creature becomes the face of a bad decision, trespassing, thrill-seeking, and the fatal human habit of wanting to get just a little closer to whatever scares us. Whether it was ever seen by anyone in the way the legend claims almost becomes secondary. Because the story performs a function. It warns. Don't go up there. Don't test the place. Don't assume you'll have time. And if you think you're seeing something ahead of you on the tracks, don't wait long enough to decide whether it's real. But practical warning alone does not explain why the legend sticks so hard. That comes from the image. A horned silhouette against the dark. A figure where there should be no figure. A voice that might call from the wrong direction. A thing that does not need to chase you before the place itself has already taken away your options. That's what makes the Popelic monster memorable. It's not a hunting story, it's a cornering story. Because in a cornering story, the terror is not what the monster is capable of. It is what your own fear is about to make you do. Run the wrong way. Freeze too long. Trust the shadow. Misjudge the distance. Listen to something calling from ahead when you should be watching the tracks beneath your feet. Maybe the legend began as exactly what some people say it was. A warning wrapped in folklore to keep curious people off a dangerous bridge. Maybe the goat man was added later. The horns, the eyes, the voice. That would make sense. But legends do not last because they are just useful. They last because they fit. And the Popelic monster fits the trestle perfectly. It belongs to the height, the exposure, the hum in the rails, the feeling that one wrong choice up there becomes final very quickly. And that's why the story survives. Because even if you strip away every supernatural detail, the fear underneath is real enough to keep the monster standing there in people's minds. And once a place has a figure attached to it, especially a figure people can picture clearly, it never really goes back to being ordinary. It becomes territory. Maybe there was never a horned creature on the bridge. Maybe there was only darkness, rumor, and the way fear turned shadow into autonomy. Or maybe there was one person who looked ahead on that trestle, saw something standing where nothing should have been, and understood all at once that they had already gone too far. Either way, if you ever find yourself on the tracks high above the ground, and the night ahead suddenly looks occupied, don't wait for it to move first. Two states, two legends, two very different kinds of fear. The Bell Witch turns the home into hostile ground, a place where the silence can break at any moment and speak back. The Popelic monster turns a bridge into a trap, a place where danger doesn't need to run at you because the setting has already done enough. One invades, one waits. But both survive because they can teach the same lesson. One fear attaches itself to a place, a room, a hallway, a bridge, a stretch of track. That place never feels empty again. And maybe that's what the strongest legends really do. They don't just tell you that there's something to be afraid of. They tell you exactly where it lives. So tonight, I want to know, Which one gets under your skin more? The voice in the Tennessee house that won't stop answering? Or the thing on the Kentucky trestle that doesn't need to move at all? Come tell me on Facebook, Instagram, and Discord at Quack in the Dark. And if your town has a local legend, a haunted place, or a story people still whisper about after dark, send it my way. It may end up in a future episode of Quack in the Dark. I'm Quackster, and this has been Quack in the Dark. Keep the lights low. Trust the warnings in your gut. And if something in the dark calls your name, make sure it's alive before you answer. Keep the lights low. Trust the warning in your gut. And if something in the dark calls your name, make sure it's alive before you answer.